Today, though, we're going to talk a little bit about frequency, and we're going to do that through looking at customer typology. But first, quick welcome. Hello, hello, good afternoon, good morning, for wherever you are joining us. Welcome to Benchmark Bites with Brad. I'm Brad. I'll be taking you through one element of our COVID-19 sector benchmark that we've created with our friends and partners at Purple 7. For those of you that are new to these weekly drop-ins, I promise to get you out of here in 30 minutes or less, most likely much less than 30 minutes. You don't need to log in to look at the benchmark right now. Really, you can just absorb and soak this in and then go play around in the benchmark on your own time. You can submit your questions to me at any time. You've got the little button down there, the Q&A button down at the bottom of the screen. Send them along. And remember that if you register, you can have access to all the recordings of these. So if you miss one, you can't watch it in real time, or if you have one that you want to revisit or share with a colleague, make sure that you're registered so that you get those emails that tell you where to find those videos. All right. We are going to talk about customer typology, which is really driven by frequency. So thus my musical choice this Monday. So when you log in to the main key metrics dashboard, and you'll find customer typology down here in the bottom left. And if we were to take a closer look for this particular organization, the first insight you would see here is a really simple understanding of your most active segment and compared to what is the most active segment in the benchmark, the selected benchmark that you are a part of. So in this organization's case, super active was their most active segment, and it accounted for 41% of bookers in the last 30 days. That 30 days part is important. These are going to be kind of snapshot perspectives of segmentation. And then it'll make a similar comparison to the most active segment for the benchmark, in which case it was also super active for this benchmark, which accounted for 31.3%. So right off the bat, you can get a sense on this initial key metric screen, which segment was your most active and how did it compare to the most active segment in the benchmark. In this case, the most active segment was super active for both the benchmark and the individual organization. And in fact, the organization exceeded the benchmark in the most active segment there by about 10%. So super active segments, Brad, what are these things? So let's walk through the segmentation definitions here. This is a behavioral segmentation approach that Purple 7 has developed based on frequency. And what it does is it looks at households, it looks at bookers who have purchased recently. In this case, we're looking at who's bought in the past 30 days, but generally when we're assigning the segmentation to them, we're looking at folks who purchased in the past 18 months. And they're going to fall into a few different categories, right? We'll have acquisition. These are new customers. They had not transacted previously. They're new. They're new to your database. Then we have current customers, and current customers are made up of about 4 different segments here. Once before, which means they've purchased once within the past 18 months, a convertee has purchased twice, active has purchased 3 to 9 times, and super active has purchased 10 plus times with at least one of those in the past 18 months. So in the last screen, when we were looking at super active being the most active segment of both a benchmark and a particular organization, this is who we're talking about here. We're talking about folks who have attended or purchased at least 10 times or more in their history, and one of those has come in the past 18 months. Then we have re-engaged segments, so made up of stale and lapsed, and really this is just how cold have they become. Stale means their last attendance prior to their most recent purchase was 18 to 36 months ago. Lapsed, it was more than 36 months ago. So they haven't, until this most recent purchase, they haven't been a part of the benchmark or haven't been active in 3 years or more. These definitions are accessible within the, you can remind yourself, you'll get used to them as you're exploring the benchmark, but there's a shortcut to be able to remind yourself of these definitions. For me, the hardest thing, for me to initially wrap my head around, is that a patron or a household is going to show up in one of these segments based on their frequency in the moment of right before their most recent purchase. So if you were to imagine, let's say I've been to your theater 9 times, prior to this most recent purchase. So I am in the active segment. When I book now, it will move me into the super active. But what the frequency and what the segmentation data is going to show me is going to show me the segmentation that I was in prior to that most recent booking. So it's going to show that I was an active, and now I've moved into super active. And the next time I book, it'll show me as a super active, right? So it's think about it, that snapshot in time of the moment before they click buy on the mouse. Courtney has a great question. Number of times, is that transactions or events? Ooh, I love that question. So short answer is that it is events. Most of the time that's driven by a single transaction. But let's say I bought 2 tickets to a particular performance, and then I decided I wanted to bring my neighbors. And so I came back and I bought them 2 tickets, right? If I'm purchasing for the same event, multiple transaction, my intention is to come to one event. That's only going to show up as once. But if I'm a repeat person, so on a performance level, I come and see a show, I have a great time, I want to come see it again next weekend, and I book again, then I would show up, that would be counted as 2 towards my frequency count, right? So it's at this sort of really performance event level and trying to look at the intention of the buyer. I hope that helps answer your question, Courtney. It's really, really good. So how does this look when we get into looking in the detail of the benchmark here? This is the screen that you would see after you leave that key metrics screen. And you'll see a couple of tabs here at the top, the customer typology tab, which we'll talk about first, and then we'll talk about the change index tab. So you'll see some data here, benchmark information over on the right-hand side. The key thing to remember is this is 30 days. We're just looking at a 30-day snapshot. And the percentages that you're seeing down here in orange and in green are proportion. They are proportions of customers. It's not revenue, it's not units. These are proportions of bookers. So think about, big old pie, right? And we've got different slices of pie. And so who's making up my pie of bookers in the past 30 days? And so in this case, your organization is going to be in orange, and this will tell you the proportionality of your bookers across these various segments over the past 30 days. And then the benchmark numbers will be in green, these like horizontal lines in the green line. And so you can relatively easily see where your organization is maybe underperforming to the benchmark. In this case, this organization underperforming a little bit with new customers, overperforming a fair amount in the super active case, right? So 41% of their bookers in the past 30 days were in the super active category, where only in the benchmark, the average was 31.3%. In other places, this organization is doing fairly close to the benchmark, right? In terms of our once before, our convertees, our re-engagement segments here, stale and lapsed, more or less pretty close. Where there might be the biggest disparity is the difference here between acquisition, new customers lagging behind others in the benchmark, but performing better than the benchmark amongst our most loyal and our most active segments here. There's a zoomed in look, and I'm noting this is benchmark data from North America because I want to look at how differently this can appear in different benchmarks. And so we'll look at the UK benchmark in a moment. This button here, the segment definitions button, you'll see will just pop up that reminder of what those segments mean, the slide that I showed you just a few minutes ago. When we look at a UK-based organization here, we can slide back and forth, and you can see how different the benchmark levels are, and how different organizations are engaging with folks in different communities. In this particular North American organization, there's pretty heavy reliance on active and super active. Not, acquisition is probably the second highest, but it's still half of what the other segment is. Whereas in the UK, this particular organization is seeing a strong proportion, more than half of their bookers are coming from brand new folks, brand new to the database, and in a significant proportion, almost a quarter, are coming from lapsed. That means they haven't engaged in 3 years or more. And they're coming back to this organization. That's a really encouraging sign. And that is well above the benchmark for other organizations in this particular UK benchmark. They seem to be lagging the benchmark in their more loyal current customers and even in some of these other re-engagements, but they're overperforming in acquisition and significantly overperforming in re-engaging lapsed patrons. So there's some really interesting insights you can gain there, even by making comparisons, but it will help you understand when you have an event on sale, at least who's been booking in the past 30 days. When I just wanted to take a closer look at the data points on the right-hand side of the screen. So I've pulled screenshots from both of these. There's the North American benchmark on the left and a UK benchmark on the right. Same organizations we were looking at their data just a moment ago. So really, 3 things to note here. On the top, you'll see a comparison of your most active segment, right? In this case, new customers were the most active segment for the UK organization. It was super active. New customers are also the most active segment across that particular benchmark, but as we noted, they're overperforming 54 to 48. Then you'll see for your organization, units and revenue for your most active segment. This is the only place where you'll see anything other than understanding a proportion of households, a proportion of bookers in this particular benchmark. So you'll see new customers have booked the most tickets. They're representing more than half of the tickets. So we can look at this and say it's 54% of our households, it's 55% of our tickets, pretty well in line and proportion there, and it's 54% of our revenue. From our most active segment. Same thing here on the North American organization. Our most active was super active. They're 41% of our bookers, but they're representing 57% of our tickets, but only 43% of our revenue. So what we're seeing, maybe larger groups in our most active booking more tickets per household there to see that swing from 41 to 57, even though the revenue proportions are fairly similar. And then lastly, you'll see your least active segment just sort of summarized here. Lapsed was the least active and convertee was the least active there. So let's pivot to the change index. So as you recall at the landing page of this particular benchmark, there's 2 tabs, the customer typology and the change index. And this is what will show up on the change index. And what the change index is doing is it's measuring the change, aptly titled. It's measuring the change between the current 30-day window and the exact same 30-day window a year ago, in this case in 2019. And it's helping us understand from the same 30-day snapshot in time, how has my proportion of audience changed? And the proportion is really important to note here, because what we're not talking about is volume in these numbers, right? I think as we all know, volume is down significantly from last year for everyone. So what we're not talking about is volume, but what we're talking about is proportion. So again, thinking about pies, 2020's pie is smaller, but we're still looking at how that pie is being sliced up and comparing it to how the 2019 pie, larger pie, but looking at how that pie was sliced up and comparing the proportions and the slices that we had from last year to this year. So what you will see here, same segmentation scheme running across the top. And what you're noting here, the numbers are going to show is this is the rate of change for last year and then for the benchmark, for your organization and then for the benchmark. So this organization, the proportion of new customers is up almost 23% from last year at this same time. Well, for the benchmark, it's up only 3.2%. All of these are down, right? This is a UK organization. This is a UK organization that we're looking at. All of our current customer proportions are down significantly, and the benchmark is showing that. And actually, our lapsed segment is down for the benchmark, but for this particular organization, the proportion of lapsed customers is up almost 16%. So what we will look at on the right-hand side is, again, some really simple top-level takeaways here. Highest relative growth comparison, what has grown the most, and then what has declined the most, right? In this case, super active for this organization is down 16.3%. That's the largest amount of decline. The highest rate of growth was acquisition, which is at 22.6 for the benchmark. It was also 3.2, was also acquisition, new customers, but only 3.2% growth. So vastly overperforming here, this particular organization. But again, proportion, not volume. And so we've got this, salmony colored box here to help hammer this point home, and to highlight this, where it says number of bookers have made a transaction with your organization over the last 30 days across all segments is down 93% compared to last year. So for this organization, their pie is 93% smaller. We're just looking at how that smaller pie is being distributed and how that has changed year over year. Here's comparing the two of these side by side, so we can get a chance to look at some really different segmentations and some really different types of customers, bookers that these organizations are engaging with. The UK organization we just looked at here on the left, performing really well in acquisition, performing really well in re-engaging our coldest, most lapsed patrons, while the North American organization performing really well amongst their most active, overperforming the benchmark significantly, underperforming the benchmark in acquisition and new customers, and across our benchmark in North America, those proportions are down 20%, while that same segment is up 3.2% in the UK. So some different buying habits, some different ways in which organizations are engaging folks across the pond. Okay, that's what I wanted to cover today. I'll pause here and vamp for a moment as you formulate questions to send along. You can do that in the Q&A button down there at the bottom of the screen. Got information there on how to add users to your organization if you've got other folks, not just you who want to have access to this information. Of course, my email is there if you've got other questions that come up along the way. As you get in there and start hammering out some of this information on your own and get into your own account and things pop up, feel free to drop me a note. Otherwise, we'll be back here next week to talk about more of the COVID-19 sector benchmark from our friends Purple 7. Pausing here. Questions? Bueller, anyone? Okay. Well, I'm going to turn you loose on the rest of your week. Thanks everyone for popping in and for being a part of the COVID-19 sector benchmark. We really appreciate it. I appreciate everything you're doing out there in the field, making our communities better, which we desperately need right now with all the good work you all are doing in your organizations. I appreciate it. Be well, stay safe. We'll see you next week.